this. So 6 months later, we had a little office on Capitol Hill. We had the germs of an idea. We had his buddy and former advisor, Barry Bozeman, kind of as the academic gravitas to make it look like we might know what we were doing. So we opened an office. We bought a portrait of Vannevar Bush and Harlan Kilgore, and we were off and running. Shortly thereafter, when I had known Dave a little bit and we had been corresponding, a couple of things happened besides the Barry Bozeman thing to sort of legitimate us. The coolest one was as we began to figure out what it is we were trying to do, and the Georgia Tech, so this started out, as I said, as a partnership between Georgia Tech, where Barry was, and Columbia, where Mike was. When the provost of Georgia Tech figured out what it was we were trying to do, he said to Barry, "We can't do that. What if we find things that are bad for us?" So they quit the consortium very early, which was one of our first great successes. We chased away the enemy, and were able to, that was impact, right? Dave was another early success. I forget, I think this had something to do with a girlfriend or a non-girlfriend or something, where he decided he would spend you can explain in a minute. Decided he would spend his semester hanging out with me in Washington rather than whatever he was going to do in Cambridge for his sabbatical. What was the real story?
Well, the real story was I had spent a postdoc in Cambridge at the Kennedy School, and I didn't want to go back and be a uber postdoc during my sabbatical and get caught, as you know, the academic politics there, get caught between Bill Clark and Sheila Jasanoff.
Oh.
So I decided
That's a frightening thought.
Yes, it is. So I decided on something even more frightening, which is working with a startup.
All right, and then just quickly moving through time, Crow left Columbia. He abandoned Lewis and me and Stephanie and others, some of whom he then brought with him. Well, anyway, so that story was he abandoned me to Jeffrey Sachs, with Jeffrey Sachs promising that he would take care of and cultivate CSPO once Mike was gone. And as soon as Mike left, he had me fire everyone over the next 6 months. It was actually the first time I had to fire someone. I sat down in the front room, I broke into tears, and she put her hands on my arm and she said, "I'll be okay." It was really hard to then this is literally a 3 a.m. voicemail call from Mike Crow. "Dan, why don't you bring the operation out to Arizona, see if you can get Justin to come along." That was basically it. And so that happened, and 10 years later, we had the last party that some of you were at, and 10 years later, we're here, and you may have some spaces to fill in.
Well, I've got this one. Perhaps only to take it back again to the early 90s when I first started corresponding with Dan, and he had been on the Hill. He had had a AAAS Science Policy Fellowship working for George Brown, and then, that book of his, Frontiers of Illusion, which was the thing that attracted Mike to you. Anyway, he wrote that on the island of Palau. One day he was probably sitting in a hammock on the beach, sipping, God knows what you were sipping.
Not while I was writing.
Not while you were writing. You couldn't tell, because I reviewed that book for science.
Another big break.
And Dan and I started, because Palau was not on the internet back then, folks, a longhand and typewritten correspondence that we now believe is lost to history.
But it was a beautiful thing.
It was. And I did not meet Dan actually face to face until that fateful summer or late spring of 1997 at a AAAS policy forum. But we have another artifact from the past to show on the screen. Yes, we're ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2001, CSPO had its first advisory committee meeting, where it was a collection of
It was basically people that we
people we liked and weren't going to crap on us.
but who had high enough status that would make us look like we were doing, making progress.
So, and this was the 20-year plan that was embedded in the materials for for that advisory committee meeting. And building up from the bottom is a little bit hard to read, but you saw sort of programmatically and research-wise what we were into: public values mapping, where did that go? Nanotechnology and society, where did that go? Health outcomes map, that actually, that actually happened too. A lot of work on climate change. Some educational aspirations and aspirations for improving the discourse more broadly. And, you know, sort of marching through those 20 years in these 5-year interval plans, you can see some things that might have happened. The big thing, of course, that is not on here is the move to ASU. That this was envisioned as an entity that was up Columbia University sitting in Washington, D.C. And I kind of think that we might toggle back and forth a little bit. But, you know, in the sort of current futures mode of the School for the Future of Innovation and Society, you might recognize Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy. There is Harry Seldon, and Harry Seldon is the inventor of that predictive social science psychohistory, and he pops up every once in a while to tell the Foundation, you know, what happened, what's going to happen, how you guys been doing. And if you recall the trilogy, in the middle there's this crazy character called the Mule that pops up, and he's an aberration, a mutant, and he takes the trajectory completely off Harry Seldon's storyline, and it goes in all sorts of weird places, like coming to ASU. And then when the Mule is gone, Harry Seldon pops back up, and he's exactly where, and the Foundation is exactly where it was supposed to be after that interval. So I'm not saying that Michael Crow is an aberration or a mutant or the Mule, but we had an entirely
first two.
But we had the trajectory sort of entirely moved aside, and yet here we are 19 years after this, or nearly so. CSPO is a central node for ideas, policies, data, and education with a network of partners and affiliates across the globe. Pretty accurate.
Yep. We need to solve all the problems we want to solve. So that's for the next 20 years. I don't know, anything else to say? Maybe simply point to a couple of people who have also been here from the beginning. So Lori, and Ira from the beginning. Our first graduate student, Mark. Our first postdoc. No, Netro. I saw Netro. Netro, our first postdoc. Yeah. And our first external faculty hire, who many of you don't know, but you'll soon get to know, Marlene.
You tell me it's the construction where you know we are about to tell my turn. Tell me that it's for production. Oh, alright, you know it's gonna be shoo-be-doo.